Today, we're looking at Krishna's Freedom Gold to go with yesterday's Freedom Blue. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Krishna's Freedom Gold is a part of their specialty series of inks. And it is a goldish kind of color. It's kind of a yellowy brownish, which is where we see the gold color. Now, to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do my writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a fountain pen Revolution Himalaya with their flex nib to take my notes for this video. Before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this very light brown across the bottom, and the yellow pushes immediately up, and we see spots of a kind of brownish tone up there. It's kind of nice. It's neat how much of it is actually a yellow. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. That line across the bottom is much more prominent, but it doesn't look crazy dark. And we don't see any of the brown push up, only the yellow, which makes me feel like the brown might be a holdout color when we have to try and clean it. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it seems to do perfectly fine. It does have some spread, it does have some feathering out spots, but largely it doesn't become blurry and unreadable, which makes it perfectly good. I wouldn't be afraid to use this in a note-taking situation. Water completely reactivates and starts pulling it up off the page. We start to see the hint of some of the white of the paper coming through, which is very good news. Pen flush, oddly, did not do as much as water, so the extra chemicals in flush are not worth what would be necessary to get this out of your pen. I think water is all it was going to take. Now, bleach, as would be expected, completely obliterates it, taking it off the paper, but you should not need to use a bleach solution to get this out of your pen. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Krishna's Freedom Gold has a viscosity of 1.48, making it, like Freedom Blue, very wet. To find my average dry times, I averaged my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Krishna's Freedom Gold has an average dry time of 12 seconds, putting it in the same behavior as their Freedom Blue, and I really like that that happens that way. It's very nice. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in bottle form, and this is one of those inks that I am glad I had to wait so long and that I knew I was dealing with that shipping cost, because I would have probably stayed away from it. Being a yellow ink, it says gold, being a yellow ink, I probably would have stayed away from it, and I would have missed out on this ink. Just wow. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X 450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X 750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. It gives us... That's not bleeding. That is, I put this down on top of Tomoe River. I wrote on a Tomoe River, and then I wrote on this one. And I'm saying that because there's tons of spots here that there's absolutely nothing on the other side of. I am super sloppy in dealing with it. I don't know. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Look at that shading. Fantastic. It is beautiful. I would have missed out on this ink if I was not ordering from overseas, because I wouldn't have ordered it. I wouldn't have ordered it from a US retailer because it was a yellow ink. I'd have missed out on this wonderful, wonderful shading. And there's a ton of people out there that are missing out on this ink because it says gold. They say it's a yellow, it's going to be too hard to use. But look at this. There is no problem in the world reading it. It's Beautiful. It's definitely a yellow or gold ink with tons of great shading that gets darker and darker and darker. Just, wow, it's a yellow into brown. Beautiful. The extra fine gives no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. The most amazing shading ever. This shades better than Apache Sunset, in my opinion. It shades to a brown, not to a dark orange. The amount of shading we're seeing here is just gorgeous. 7 seconds to dry. So manageable. The extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Shade out the wazoo. I don't even know what a wazoo is, but out of the wazoo, tons of shading. Gorgeous, gorgeous colors. Just, I like brown inks. I like orange inks. We don't go through the orange, we go yellow into brown, and it's a full shade in the spectrum. Just, wow. 13 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby shows us less color variation with the extra fine than we got in the writing. The medium shows us the color variation we got in the writing. The smear test, you're not going to recover this if you smear it. It is still a light ink. So Tomoe River. And I'm sorry. We got spot of bleed. Spot of bleed. We got 2 little spots of bleed. I'm sorry. We do have some spots of bleed. We have ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and crazy shading. Especially on this paper. This paper doesn't always give me very much shading. I know it brings out the sheen, it draws out dry time, it does certain things for inks very well. I don't feel like it lets them show their shading too well because it lets the ink level out. This is a thick ink. Being a thick ink, you really expect that it can't show that shading? Not on this paper, and it did. 11 seconds to dry. The medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. It's not really showing a lot of the shading. It's this beautiful brown. So it's the dark of this gold. So it's a beautiful brown at this point. 20 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us not a lot of color variation in ink, or in either. We did get a little bit more color variation with the extra fine, not very much. Other than that, basically truthful. The smear test, you likely can't recover it. Rhodia. This, I was especially just sloppy. This isn't bleed. This is me just being sloppy. This ink, it takes a long time to dry. I mean, you look at what it was taking here. 11 and 20 seconds. That's not horrible. It was a very dry day, but it smears. Sometimes a long time, so it doesn't sometimes reach its full dry, and I didn't realize it until later. Anyway, that's a whole bunch of bleed through, but that's a scrubby. Is it? Yeah, that's a scrubby. I don't really count that. Hard to tell because I did such a horrible job at taking this sample if there's bleeding. There is no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. It's a lovely yellow with a ton of shading, and it doesn't get super dark on us. It keeps the yellow. It doesn't become the brown. Not in the 1.1. It is a great shading yellow, and it looks amazing. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and yes, shading all over, and it keeps that very light tone of the 1.1. Beautiful stuff. Absolutely beautiful. Just really, wow. This is being missed out. People are missing it because of the name. Nobody's looking at it. I tend to pass over sometimes the yellow inks. Sometimes I get them and I test them and I can't even show them because they're that bad. This is beautiful. The medium, it's the yellow and a lot of that brown. It comes in much darker here with no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and great shading all over it. Amazing. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium don't show a lot of color variation in and of themselves. It shows up much better in the writing. I don't believe you could recover it if you smeared it. So I tested it on black and red paper, which tend to be a bit more absorbent. Yes, we're starting to get some bleed through spots on this. So this ink has been a little bit more aggressive. It's got no shading. No ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. No real shading here, not with this 1.1 on this paper. Extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. You got spots you want to say that it's a little bit darker, but is it my head saying I really like this ink and I want to see shade? There are spots that are a little bit darker, the I to C in quick. A little bit darker, the H to E and the a little bit darker, the BR is a little bit darker. It's not tremendous. It's not stand out like it has been. And that's maybe the reason I'm hesitant to call it shading on here. Because it's been so stand out and so spectacular that this one's not good, but the ink color is very usable. 6 seconds to dry. Noticeably darker tone with that medium. It becomes that golden brown. Just wow. With the medium. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We do get some shading throughout the writing. We do get to see some of those lighters and the lighter brown and a darker yellow. We see it mixing and it's beautiful. The top of Q to the bottom of Q, nice. The C to the K, there's a whole light area in there. The J on jumps gets lighter before it gets dark again. Over starts light and gets darker all the way through. It's beautiful. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us less color variation than we actually see. The scrubbies look pretty standard as that's their color, which is basically true with the extra fine. We don't see a lot of the shading there. In the medium, we see a lot more shading in the writing than we do in the scrubby. The smear test, you're likely not going to recover this. If you smear it, it is still a very light ink. So Hazel paper. Hazel paper is the paper I ordered when I ordered from them, and it was good. It still is good. This is my last one of those notebooks. I'm already into it. I had like 4 of them. Great stuff. I might have to order again from them, find out what it is they have for inks that I haven't tried, just to get more notebooks. It's going to be my justification just to get more of these notebooks, because these are good. These are great. These need to come to where I don't have to wait 2 months for them to get here. But if I have to wait 2 months, I will. I'm just going to need to order them more because, wow, are they good. The Hazel paper. Now, what's weird is if we want to call it bleed, these spots that we might want to call bleed are all in the same region of the paper. They're all right here. So I don't really think this is bleed. I'm sorry about that. That was my pen clicking away. That was a loud pop. I apologize. I don't really want to say that this is bleed. And if it is bleed, there's an obvious deficiency in the paper in that region across, because it's really specific as a zone. So I am not calling this bleed. I'm calling it either me being sloppy or a problem with the paper right there. We have no ghosting. The 1.1, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We do get some really nice shading with the 1.1. This is nice. And we haven't always seen very much shading on this paper. The extra fine, same tone, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Shade, beautiful shade, all the way through. This is just such a gorgeous ink, ignored by the fountain pen community. 5 seconds to dry, super fast. Medium, darker tones, beautiful, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Look at that shading all over it. It is standout, gorgeous, and ignored by the fountain pen world because it's yellow and we don't want to have to wait all that time for it to come from India to be disappointed with it, and you're not going to be. Order this. Wait 2 months for it. 9 seconds to dry. The extra fine and the medium scrubby both show us some decent color variation. We get a lot more color variation in the writing itself. And the smear test, because it is a very light ink, I don't think you could recover it if you smeared while you were writing. And that's all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Krishna's Freedom Gold, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. And like with Freedom Blue, I would decided this was an ink I should be thematic for. I feel these inks are named for important things, probably an Independence Day. So, with that in mind, I decided to pair it with Krishna's Freedom Blue, because they look great together. And that's all that it needs. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. Now, what do I think of Krishna's Freedom Gold? I think for people that are afraid of yellow inks, that they're too light to read, they need to try this ink. It is truly a great yellow ink. And as a side note, if you mix this with the Freedom Blue, you get a really cool green. It is really cool. Thanks for watching.